There's tons of hype today in the construction industry around a variety of different technologies that are designed to help you save time and money on your projects, get you better data, run your business more effectively. But a lot of construction companies have challenges with technology integration, identifying the right types of technology, and then bringing that technology to their people so that they can use it in a way that will positively impact the organization. And that's why my conversation today with Karl Sorensen is so important. Karl is the Director of Project Solutions for HIT Contracting out of the Washington, D.C. area. Karl's a very interesting guy because he began his career working for his dad's general contracting company as a laborer. Went to college, came out of college, and was a project engineer, project manager for a Department of Defense contractor. So he has a tremendous amount of field experience, which has informed the way he looks at the use of technology in a construction company. So he doesn't come from this sort of Pollyanna perspective where technology is going to solve all our problems. It's a much more realistic, straightforward point of view that I think you'll find very, very helpful. So in our conversation today, Karl and I discuss how to identify the right types of technology for your organization, how one size does not fit all, how to integrate that technology into your company by getting feedback from the field and by leadership in the organization, driving it through the organization in a measured manner. So please listen carefully to this because you're going to find many nuggets that will help you practically in the way you view technology, in the expectations you set for technology, even how you interact with companies that are offering you this technology. And there's a number of key insights that Karl shares that will help you to get the most out of those relationships. So, as I always say, enjoy my conversation with Karl. Feel free to share it with other people who you think will benefit. And thank you for listening to Construction Genius. This is Eric Anderton, and you're listening to Construction Genius, a leadership masterclass. Thomas Edison said that genius is 1% inspiration and 99% perspiration. If you're a construction leader, you know all about the perspiration, and this show is all about the 1% inspiration that you can add to your hard work to help you to improve your leadership. Karl, welcome to Construction Genius.
Thanks, Eric.
You occupy a very interesting place in the construction industry in that you have experience working in the field, but you're also very interested about the usage of technology in a construction business. Can you give me a little bit of your history in construction and how that's influenced the way you look at the industry at the moment?
Yeah, absolutely. And so my history in construction kind of dates back to even when I was, living with my parents, where my dad ran a Chicago-based general contracting business. I was a laborer for him, but then after college, joined a West Coast DoD contractor as a PE, where the company I joined ended up specializing in work on military bases and other government installations. And so I think that kind of gave me the first taste of construction and construction operations and efficiencies and inefficiencies, which really, as a millennial coming into the construction environment, even at that time, we still there was smartphones and whatnot, and you walk onto a job site and it was almost like 1990s technology. It was very antiquated how they were going about even addressing just workflows. And so that was, I think that disconnect between, hey, everything is very paper-based and paper-heavy, but also there's technology tools available to make my job easy, but my company is saying that I need to do this paper-based way. I think that kind of started this conflict within me about there's an opportunity and there's a better way of going about this. And so from every project that I jumped to, and as I kind of became a project manager on that track, I was able to kind of affect more influence on the project sites and some of the technological tools that we had. And so I think that is kind of the first taste of it. But I remember even just kind of peering over my shoulders to see what other GCs were doing, other contractors, and it was still kind of more of the same. It just seemed like a lot of companies were okay with this paper-based process just because it was working for them, and me feeling discontent with that just because I know that, you look at a superintendent. I remember just from my office looking at my superintendent where they've got impossible schedules. They've got impossible expectations placed upon them where they're waking up first first guys and gals on the job site, opening it up at 4 or 5 a.m. and then ending the job, being the last ones to walk off. You're thinking, at least I was thinking, like, how are you not getting burnt out? Like and just thinking there needs to be a better way, or at least tools to help them manage their job sites more effectively so they can go home at 3 p.m. or 4 p.m. or whatever is appropriate. So I think that is kind of what really put that taste of there's got to be a better way. There's technology available. How do we really help? How do I help our construction, the people that I had relationships with in the job sites? How do I help them do their job better? And then I think in addition, like sitting down with a lot of subcontractors, especially trades within the job site trailer, I remember thinking, like, with government, there were small business requirements, right? So you get a small business in here and you ended up signing a pretty large drywall contract. And I remember sitting there on the other side of the table going, like, is this going to be okay? Like, is this going to work out? Are they going to be able to scale operations appropriately, especially if they're so heavily reliant on paper-based systems? And so that kind of also, whenever I sat across the table from a smaller GC or smaller contractor, I think of my dad's business going, like, man, what if I put my dad in this position? Would that be an impossible position to put them in or put him in? And is there a better way to set them up for success? So that was kind of the approach even I had at the negotiating table. It was like, I hope that these, you set them up for success as much as possible, but you also hope that they're also leveraging technology in a way where they can scale and rise to the occasion of a large contract.
Okay, so let's just parse that out a little bit here. First, you started off as a laborer with your dad, and then you went into engineering as a project engineer with a DoD contractor. What do you think is the main disconnect between you as a millennial and the older generations in terms of comfort level with technology? Is there anything to that, or is that just sort of jibber jabber? Give me something on that.
Yeah, there is. I remember thinking, was probably one of my last projects working for the DoD contractor. I remember thinking that if my superintendent can open up his Outlook, by the end of the day, like that was a good day. And that was just because he was very comfortable and, interacting face-to-face phone calls. And I remember even setting up, team members within the trailer with iPads or with other tech devices. And, it almost became a joke, right? It's, it's a doorstop, it's a paperweight, whatever it might be. We're just not going to use it for what it's designed to be. And I think there was a mystique around technology in a sense where I don't want to break it. You gave me this, several $100,000, $1,000 device. I don't want to break it. Not only that, it seems like a liability, but not only that, I got a better way of doing it. And so I think there's a level of like, being able to give technology tools out where they can be handled and there isn't that fear of breaking it, but then also training and equipping team members in a way where to how to use it and why it's important. And I think there's also some sort of disconnect even there where I think a lot of times, and maybe this is this is another conversation, but I think, you talk about shiny objects versus sharp tools. And I think for a long time, perhaps field personnel, especially those who are well-seasoned, saw tech as just another shiny object, that it's really not a tool for my toolbox. It's just something else that's going to waste my time. It's going to add, minutes or hours to my day. I already got a busy day. I don't got time for it. So I'm not going to use it.
Okay. So why do you think construction companies struggle with identifying the right technology for their business?
Yeah, that is a complicated question with lots of interesting answers. I think primarily what I've noticed is there's a lack of process with a lot of contractors and GCs. They just don't have a spelled out, even written down process for how to do anything. And obviously it varies depending on, size and scope and complexity of the contract you're talking about. But a lot of times they just don't even have a paper-based process. And that process just lives in people's heads. And so I think because of that, there's no opportunity to assess what technology would actually improve the process. So I think that is a component. And I also think another big component is... Hold on a second. Yep. So are you saying then that, and I totally understand where you're coming from, where a lot of guys and gals are just doing stuff that they know how to do, but they haven't got it written down. Is that maybe step one for someone to begin thinking about what technology might do to benefit them? Yes, absolutely. And so I think step one is to write down the process. Even if it lives in your head, even if it's a process that maybe it's not important, I think it's worth writing down. And I almost look at job sites as it's its own startup, right? It's a startup company. You got a budget, you got a goal, you got, there's marketing, there's expectations for managing the client and relationships and all these things. And so as you bring other people on and as you bring team, you need to be having a process for, hey, this is how we go about closeout. This is how we go about mobilization. And so that it just doesn't only live in your head, you have it out. And so that people can look at it and then you almost can get feedback about it, right? Where you're like, I have a written process for mobilization. And maybe somebody says, hey, maybe we shouldn't have this component here, or maybe we don't need to do that. And I think that really ends up challenging you to improve the process and maybe find technology solutions for it.
Okay, so in your experience, let's say for conversation's sake that there's a variety of processes, whether it be in the bid, the plan, the build stage, that are either not written down or not well recorded. Where should a company start in terms of the best opportunities in your mind for leveraging technology at the moment?
Yeah, I think, and so I think sometimes it gets me in trouble a little bit because I don't always think that there's a technology solution for any paper-based process, right? Okay. And so I look at a few things. I look at what's taken the most amount of time. So if something takes an incredible amount of time to do, if it's labor intensive, there's probably a technology solution out there to really shorten that. I also look at how many hands does it touch? Okay, does this process mean that this, I write this, I receive a contract from a specialty contractor. I send it to our legal department. They need to evaluate it. We send it out to this other department. They need to check it out. They need to bring it back to us. We need to, review the red lines. Touches a lot of hands, touches a lot of departments. It's also going to require a lot of time. There's probably a solution out there to help you kind of alleviate some of that, to collaborate in real time. So I think those are two big areas. And you also want to look at the areas that are costing you money. So if it's require a lot of labor time, it's going to cost you a lot of dollars as an organization to really see through that process in a very traditional, perhaps paper-based way, that even just by innovating or looking to maybe some sort of technological solution, you're probably going to be saving a lot more money and probably offsetting the cost of that technology more so than that.
Okay. What about in terms of the impact of your business? So I always think of a construction company where the money is made, it's made in the field. If you're not building in the field effectively, then obviously you're not going to be making good money. So would you recommend in terms of, because I like that idea of where is the time being taken and how many hands is it touching? In your experience, does it serve companies well to begin in the field because that's where the money is made and lost, or should they start in other areas other than the field?
I mean, I think that's where the biggest opportunity is out in the field, because that's where the revenue is being generated, right? And so I think that, you talk about overhead and burden on the job site alone, you want to eliminate as much as that. But then you look at some of the back office support where, okay, maybe we don't need an entire legal team. Maybe there's some sort of innovation out there, technological solution that can provide some of that. And so you look at, there's ways that for sure, it's like and I think maybe the best way to look is to look at your P&L statements, any type of statements, like where's the most money even running out the door? Or you're looking at your time cards, who's spending the most time on certain projects, and taking a deeper look at that to see if there's opportunities for savings.
Okay, so just to summarize there, just to begin with here, is we have this idea of time being spent, we have this idea of people involvement or hands being touched, and then we have this idea of money being spent.
Yeah.
And so time, people, money, those are all areas that I can look at and think about, how can technology help me?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay, excellent. So when it comes to implementing technology, how can a company begin a good process? We've talked about laying out writing down your processes. What's the next step at that point?
Yeah. So process is key. And I can't overemphasize how much a process is important, because I think sometimes we flip the role and we look at a technology solution before we look at the process. And so I think that is something that's been traditionally a struggle where, hey, I saw this slick marketing campaign. I saw this, one-page spread here or there. Yep. Let's go get it because it's going to save us money. And I think that's a big fallacy, just because maybe it does save you money, but if you don't have a process, you have no way of measuring how much time or how much labor it's really saving you. And you don't know how much money that's actually going to save you in the end. Okay. So you need to have a process to build that technology solution on top of.
Okay.
So I think,
go ahead.
I also was going to say is, sometimes I say the biggest catch-22 in construction is the individuals that see the problems firsthand. don't always have they don't always have the decision-making power, and the people that have all the decision-making power don't see the issues firsthand. So often a disconnect between the back office or leadership teams and the frontline workers on job sites, right? A superintendent sees an issue and then they don't have the power to perhaps get a technology or an improvement. On the flip side, leadership says, hey, we saw this great thing. It works on your iPad. Let's give it to our superintendent. And he's like, what the heck? This is not going to solve anything.
Beautiful. Let's talk about that then. So I know leaders are listening to this podcast right now. If I'm the owner, senior leader in a construction company, how would you advise me to be looking at technology and bridging that gap that you just described? What do I need to do?
Yeah, I think a part of it, and I'll break this down a little bit, is developing even just kind of a culture of innovation or experimentation where let's just even get a committee together or individuals together where you're bringing a project manager, a superintendent with, perhaps yourself or someone from the leadership team. Have touch points, like have a feedback loop where you're hearing firsthand what's going on job sites. Not only will that inform your decisions, but then if you're saying, hey, listen, I'm considering this type of technology or innovation or whatever it might be, you're getting feedback from the field where a superintendent goes, yep, that's something I can use. Or he might just say, nope, that's not going to be something we use, or we don't see it, or actually we're using something different already out there. Let's just continue to leverage that. And I think that feedback loop is incredibly important.
That's beautiful. How often, if you have a time frame here, how often do you think a little committee like that should be meeting? What kind of communication loop are we looking at there?
Yeah, I mean, I think it also depends on the size, but I really think it doesn't necessarily need to be like a weekly thing. It could be even just like a monthly touch base or even a quarterly. I mean, it also depends on how often or how aggressively you want to, attack, some of these problems. But if you really want to get a sense and keep your fingers on the pulse of what's going on job sites, I think just having a monthly reoccurring meeting just to say, hey, how are things going? How are things working? And maybe even just having representatives from either different, let's just say here at HIT, we have, 12 regional offices, lots of different business units. So I like having representatives from each of the regional offices and business units to be represented in some way where, the problems and struggles of a superintendent in California might be very different from the problems and struggles of a superintendent in Virginia. And let's talk about that. Or if I have a solution that might be good for this data center project, doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be a good solution for a corporate interiors project somewhere else. So working through that and evaluating and figuring out, and I think having that dialogue on some sort of reoccurring basis is always a good thing.
Okay, so give me a little bit more about this culture of experimentation, because as soon as you start saying experimentation, I start thinking about money and risk. So help me out with that. How's that done effectively?
Yeah. And this is something that we kind of balance out a little bit here at HIT. We're very much, we like to standardize and figure out what's our standard operating procedures, but we don't want to overprescribe what our standards are because we want to leave that room for creativity. We want to leave that room for innovation and almost imagination, as kind of ridiculous as that might sound, where, hey, we want our superintendents and our PMs to always kind of keep their ear open. We're not saying, hey, here's all the tools that you'll ever need to use. Go have at it. We don't care anymore. It's like, no, keep your ear to the ground. If there's things that you want to try out, whether that's, hey, you saw a drone flight on site, you want to try out a drone for yours. Hey, that's great. If it's something we're like, hey, one of our trade contractors was using this really slick daily reporting app. Can we try that out? And the interesting thing about that is I think you're right. I think there's a worry about liability. Like, oh, isn't it expensive to like just adopt that? I think the big secret, there's this, I think a big secret in the industry is that a lot of technology companies are willing to work alongside general contractors and to test out their technology on projects. And so, sure, maybe the mainstay large tech companies are going to say, no, we're not going to give you a tech for free. But there's a lot of technology products out there that can do just as good of a job, if not better sometimes, where they're willing to say, hey, yeah, try out our product on several job sites. There's the freemium model, go have at it. Or they're saying, hey, let's roll out a pilot license where we'll give you a 50%, 75% discount on this technology. Try it out. Let us know what you think. And then you can start making those evaluations internally of whether or not that's actually worth it.
Okay. So that's interesting there because you're talking about then leveraging the technology companies' desire to get their product out there. And right now in the construction space, there are so many startups. Do you think there are specific areas that you've seen where construction companies need to be looking for technology where perhaps they're not looking at the moment? Have you identified any specific areas like this?
Yeah, I think what I would answer, I think one of my answers is kind of from years ago, what I tend to see even at association events where everyone liked talking about like this sexy, glamorous technology, right? Oh, let's talk about exoskeletons and robotics and even drones where, you go to these events, whatever it might be. And so the thing was like, a mom and pop contractor is looking to do their job well. They don't need a drone. Like they don't need exoskeletons. They just need how about a better accounting software? Like how about a daily reporting software that you can go back and measure productivity? And it's stuff like that where like, I will always preach, look at the meats and potatoes. Don't overlook, just because it's boring tech doesn't mean it's needless tech. Like I think it's good. It could be good technology there. So don't always reach out for something that's going to really, grab the attention like a drone or like an exoskeleton, because I don't think you necessarily need it. So I think I would start there is being okay with some boring technology, but because I think that's essential. I also think that, and this is something we'll probably get in a little bit later, but at the end of the day, I think technology is kind of a twofold benefit, right? You want first and foremost, when I'm thinking about technology for a job site, that's going to actually benefit the job site. Is it actually going to provide value? Is it going to allow superintendents to go home early or on time? Is it, are they going to maintain their productivity levels or heighten their productivity? So I look at that from the standpoint of, is it benefiting the job site? And then the second item, which is almost as important, but I think it's secondary, is what kind of data can we collect from the office through that tool that's going to help us make mission critical strategic decisions as an organization. So leveraging that data in a way that is beneficial to the organization.
Yeah, that's interesting because there's a couple of things that pop into my mind. First is garbage in, garbage out, right? So if the information going into the technology isn't good, then information coming out isn't great. But then also contractors are creating a whole bunch of information and sometimes they don't even use that effectively. They don't know what to do with it. So in your experience, how do the best contractors take that information and process it in a way that's beneficial to the company?
Yeah. And it's a good question, because I think there is an element of just because you're collecting data doesn't mean that's the data that you need or you want. And so I feel like people are like collecting data for the sake of collecting data, which, you want to know. So I think to answer your question, I think in some sense, you want to have an idea as an organization, as a leader, to know how you want to be using that data. So by understanding, okay, I want these specific metrics because this is going to guide this one decision that we have struggled with traditionally as an organization. And then looking at, okay, in order to get those metrics, I have to mandate perhaps, our field teams to populate these fields, or to make sure that their schedules are updated on a monthly basis with these different criteria, and that information is pushed back to me because that's the data I need. I think, when you talk to even about like a project management software, there's all sorts of like different tools and fields that you get to a point where it's almost data exhaustion, the front end, where the frontline workers just, I don't want to populate, I can't populate all these fields. And now you get poor data hygiene or poor data integrity. So by, I think, articulating on the front end, hey, here's the specific tools or the specific fields or metrics we're looking to measure, feel free to use the tool however you want, but make sure at the end of the day that these metrics are populated, because that's kind of what we use as an organization to make decisions, I think is important to convey on the front end of any type of, technology integration.
Okay. So let's go back to the leadership piece then. Let's say I've identified a need. I've confirmed that need with folks in the field as well as folks in the office. In your experience, what is an effective model for rolling out a technology into an organization?
Yeah, I've seen it done before, which I wouldn't recommend, this all or nothing approach, where it's just like, all right, we see a cool technology, we want to go forward, with it. MSA, enterprise agreement, let's roll it on out. And I think that is a misstep at times. I think perhaps sometimes it works. My approach and what I've seen to work is having a very, very defined parameters and almost a phased rollout, right? So what I would typically do is say, hey, let's develop a pilot program. Let's roll this out on 5 strategic sites, 10 strategic sites, whatever it might be, whatever that cost is. It usually can be heavily discounted because it's a pilot program. So looking at that, roll it out, and then you basically you work alongside those 10 or 5 teams. And then a lot of times those technology companies are going to want to work alongside those 5 or 10 teams as well. So they'll provide customer success, customer support. They'll be boots on the ground, training and helping, making sure that it's successful in the field if it's a field application. And so you work with them. You go throughout the course of the project lifecycle. At the end, what I do is I get and collect feedback from those field teams that are actually using that product. So we collect that data. Hey, what was your user experience like? Did it really save you time? How much time did it require for you to put this closeout package together using this application? And so you kind of synthesize all that data and find out, okay, where is it working? Where is it not working? And I think that arms you with a few different ideas where, first off, I think it's good to probably provide that feedback to even the tech vendor. So you have a list of saying, hey, here's where they're messing up. This is where it's really not a benefit to our organization. You can go back to them and say, hey, listen, here's all the areas we need to see improvement before we really can consider a larger rollout at this organization. And they might go, yep, that's what we want to do. We'll fix and address those issues. Let's move forward. Or they might just say, hey, that's not part of our philosophy or business plan. We're not going to do it. And that informs you like, hey, maybe this isn't the right solution. And then secondly, depending on the strategic job site you roll it out on, hopefully those are good samples as far as a good sample mix of projects that your organization does, right? So if it's a data center project, a law firm project, a base building project, you're getting those representatives to weigh in. And maybe it's good for 3 or 4 different project types, but not maybe the 10 project types that you currently oversee. And so maybe it's more of a phased rollout. Say, hey, all of our data center, all of our technology and base building projects are going to use this product because we see the most value. For the rest of the organization, we're not going to mandate that. We're not going to require that. And because of that, it's almost a less expensive MSA agreement, but still providing the value you need to see as an organization.
So what you're describing there is a flexible approach. It's not an all or nothing approach.
Correct. Yeah.
Let me ask you this. In technology companies, we're all familiar with this idea of the minimum viable product. And so the technology mindset is to roll something out that they know is not ready to begin, not fully ready for game day or whatever, and to bring it to the market and to test it out. How important is it for construction company executives to understand that minimal viable product perspective?
I think it's important. When you're interacting with a company that's still dealing with an MVP, I think there's also lies in the most opportunity where they're still growing and figuring things out. And so you understand, it'd be great to get their roadmap, figure out where they want to go, what their end goal is. But I think when you're working with a company that has an MVP, I think they're pretty malleable, they're flexible, they want to make sure that their product is successful in a real world application. And so I think you can really help and guide them to better serving you as an organization, as a leadership team, getting the data that you need to see. So I think there's that component to it, but also realizing that, if you're dealing with a company that's MVP, that's still very rough around the edges, it's not polished, they might not even have a customer success team to provide and really address issues. And that's something to be aware of when you interact with them. Say, hey, we have a several thousand person organization. Perhaps this small 3-person technology team can't support our entire organization. Or on the other side, where maybe it's a little bit more of established, tech, it's an MVP, but they're willing to grow and to scale with you as you continue to have this flexible phased rollout, that you guys can grow together. And I think there's a lot of opportunities to be gained there. I think a lot of times, we tend to look at, I want to find an out of the box solution that's just going to be that silver bullet that fixes everything, where I don't think that's necessarily always the right decision to make. It can be a very good decision, don't get me wrong, but I think working with MVPs that still have, a rough product, a product that's a work in progress, but you can kind of see where it's going and where it might go. I think there's such great opportunity for partnership and mutual benefit that I think it's good for construction leaders to partner with them.
So I think it's important that it seems like it's almost important for technology companies not to oversell, and for construction executives to set their expectations accordingly, both in terms of what the technology can accomplish and in terms of how they roll it out in their organization. Yeah.
And I think what's been super encouraging, even as of the last 5 or 10 years, I think when I was working on the technology side of construction, 7 or 8 years ago, it was a lot of out of industry developers developing technology for construction, saying, hey, I haven't stepped foot on a job site, but here's a technology that's going to solve all your problems. And a superintendent and PM is like, what is this? This is not going to help me out at all. And it goes unused and the technology company disappears. What's been really interesting and cool to see is there's been a lot of former construction professionals getting to that development game and being able to provide technology that specifically addresses construction problems, right? And so I think, there was a long time, there was almost like technology companies inventing problems for them to solve in construction, where it's just, how about you solve an actual real problem? And so seeing those construction professionals, leaving their firms to develop those products, I think has been really interesting. And I think it's been super beneficial for the industry as a whole.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. That's an excellent insight. So let me give you some quick hitter questions here. In your mind, what's a technology that's currently getting hyped in construction that's pretty worthless?
That's a good question. I don't want to say worthless. I think some things, a technology that I feel like is really being pushed is stuff with AR, with HoloLens. Like, I think augmented reality, I think, has its time and place. I think robotics has its time and place. I think we're still too early for that. So it's not worthless quite yet, but I see it that, I remember even reading, it was some sort of article about, and I don't want to disparage anybody, but even like there was a robot that was taking pictures on job sites, right? And some GC's like, this is the best way to take pictures for a job site. And I'm thinking that's like $100,000 piece of machinery. Like, you can't have a project engineer or people on site to take pictures for you. So I think looking over glamorizing and glorifying what robotics is, or glorifying what, HoloLens AR is really doing. Yeah, they have it. And I think it's going to I think those types of solutions are going to have their time and place. I think it's a little bit too early right now. And I think seeing some of that, I think being deployed and being glamorized is a little much, because I don't think companies are really realizing that ROI quite yet.
Okay. That's a good answer. I appreciate that. What's an undervalued technology that's currently being ignored that companies really need to take a look at because it could have a huge impact on their business?
Yeah. I think this is something that we're thinking through a little bit too, where first off, I would always, like I said before, the meats and potatoes, like, always go with the software that's fundamental to your business operation, right? So like, I'm always going to preach daily reporting, accounting software, project management software. Those are all good things. Even, they come at an expensive price point, where if you do the cost benefit analysis that, hey, we roll this across, 50, 70, 100 projects, it's only costing us $1,000 per project. That's probably saving you money. That's probably saving you time. So I'm always big on that. So super bullish on that. I am kind of bullish on, I want to go towards daily reporting, but I also want to go towards actually wearables. I think, and I say it specifically, I know this is not going to be like a great, maybe perhaps not going to be received well by everybody, but I think one of the things that we struggle, that I think we can improve upon is just data collection in general, right? So I think we can collect data, and I think sometimes there's a lot of user error, manual entry error, people forgetting to log in time or data. And I think there's some interesting stuff where there's fairly inexpensive beacons and sensors that you can just kind of throw on personnel, and it's clocking them in, clocking them out. It's reading them for dehydration. It's reading them to see fall risks, safety risks, environmental risks. And then now in a day and age with COVID, where it's just like, all right, if beacons are getting too close together, let's maintain that 6-foot separation. So I think I still think that it's undervalued because it almost looks gimmicky. We're like, oh, sensors, and I think there's still like that stigma associated with it, but I think it's undervalued, and I think there could be a lot of benefit from it. And I think it's not as expensive as people think.
So that's interesting, because when we're talking about the hype, it's stuff that maybe the use case isn't quite there yet. And then with the undervalued stuff, you want to try and look beyond maybe some of that gimmicky stuff that might just put you off a little bit, and really ask the question, does this have a positive impact? Yeah.
I mean, I think I remember interacting with a sensor company. They said that, again, they were able to get over this, the site was able to get over the stigma of that, but it also encouraged some level of accountability in a positive way, where typically subcontracted trades might be rolling up after a 6-hour day. They noticed that the trend increased to maybe 7.5 hours. So they got an extra hour and a half per trade, per man or workforce hour per trade across their job site on an everyday basis. And just looking at the productivity levels as a whole really increased. And it was just the mere fact of like, hey, they know that they've got some sort of, badge in, badge out through some sort of automatic sensor. And because of that, it's holding them to some level of accountability. And so they're going to see their day through a little bit further than they did previously.
That's beautiful. So then last question in this segment, what's coming that people aren't aware of yet that's going to make a massive impact in the next 5 to 10 years, do you think?
I think and this isn't like, hey, this is, giant robots in the horizon. It's I'm more like big on the interoperability of data, right? So being able to collect data in a meaningful way that we can analyze, synthesize it through and make good decisions. Right now we have, and we might touch upon this later, but you walk into any general contractor, we've got 40, 50 solutions sometimes. There's all sorts of solutions everywhere. There's all sorts of data everywhere. And so it's just like a big mess of data. And so I think right now I noticed this trend kind of over time where maybe 10 years ago, there's a lot of closed APIs. There was a lot of software products that weren't talking to other products. So I think there's this opportunity now where a lot of these tech vendors are opening up that API. They're opening up that, hey, we want our data to be shared. We want our software to work with other software. And because of that, you're starting to streamline that a little bit, which has been super exciting because now all of a sudden I'm able to pull information from our schedule and from our daily reports and from all sorts of other metrics to really kind of make interesting business decisions as a leader and see kind of where the market is going, where, the prices are going, and really make, I think, decisions that we weren't able to make before by streamlining some of this data and having data in a singular spot.
So that's interesting to me because I get that impression too, is there's a bunch of tech companies running around, waving their hands in the air, trying to get contractors' attention. There's stuff that works, there's stuff that's okay, there's stuff that's underdeveloped. Where do you see the industry going, the tech industry, as it relates to construction going in terms of consolidation and integration?
Yeah. I mean, you're already starting to see it happen. There's a lot of, don't get me wrong, it's a crowded space. There's a lot of technology. There's a lot of redundant technology. I mean, I feel like you look at like, hey, let me just Google what's a image capture application for construction, and you get a whole list of them. And so what we're seeing already happening is with that redundancy is that larger firms are buying up the smaller firms and kind of consolidating that those workflows under a single hood, right? So you look at the Procore, they're buying companies, look at the Autodesk, they're buying. And so there's a lot of great consolidation going on just through that, where they know that, like, I think maybe initially it was, hey, Procore is this silver bullet that they're going to do everything great and fantastic. And I think for a long time, that for sure, there's a lot of benefit what they do. But I think they also came to the realization that, okay, they've got a data reporting tool, but there's other single point solutions that do data reporting super well. Right. Yes, they've got a photo tool, but there's a lot of great photo applications out there and so instead of competing with them, they're either buying them up or they're integrating with them. And because of that, it's almost created this seamless ecosystem that I think is focused on, again, consolidation, but then also providing a best-in-class technology stack for people who want to buy Procore, Autodesk. So I think I see consolidation going through that. I don't know how much consolidation is going to go. It's a gigantic industry. And so, and even just looking at, the technology that's here, there's a whole litany and, endless list of technology abroad. Australia's coming out with, a ton of great technology. Europe is coming out with a ton of great technology. And so that's not even looking at necessarily the international markets. We're just looking at the US, and just being construction as big as it is, there's always going to be a time and place for technology. So there will be consolidation, but I still think that it's a gigantic industry that still needs to get served by a lot of these tech firms. And so there won't perhaps be as big of a consolidation as we might expect.
Okay, excellent. So as we're wrapping up here, give me the top 3 reasons a technology implementation fails in a construction company. And feel free to summarize any of the stuff that you said before, but top 3 reasons a technology integration fails in a construction company. Yeah.
I think it fails because there's a lack of feedback from the field, lack of an understanding of what's going on job sites, and getting that perspective of whether or not technology is actually going to work. Yep. I think there's a lack of understanding of processes. So you're buying software and buying technology, thinking that's going to be and solve all sorts of issues, but you have no idea. It's like, oh, I bought a photography app to roll out to my field, and so it's going to save us a bunch of time and money. It's just like, but you don't have a process. You don't know how much time or money that's saving. And actually, in the end, it might be costing you more money. You just have no idea. So I think those integrations type fail. And then I think thirdly, you want change agents within your organization. You want people bought in. And I think that varies from company to company of what that looks like. I think there's, I always tell technology companies that if you could sell it to a superintendent, you've got a salesperson for life, because superintendents, they will go from project to project, company to company, and they'll talk about that one application that saved saved their day, saved their job, saved a few hours, and they will take that with it. And so finding those change agents within your organization that are really going to champion that, whether that's a superintendent or a PM, whether it's well-seasoned individuals or just kind of green right from college, you want to find those change agents that are really going to lead the charge of technology. And so without those, I think 3 components, I think it's a high likelihood technology is going to fail at your organization.
Okay. So I'm just, as we're ending up here, give me 3 practical positive action items I need to take as a construction company owner or senior executive to make progress in integrating technology in the next, let's say 90 days even.
So for the next 90 days?
Sure. Let's say 90 days. Or do we need to do a longer time frame? You tell me.
No, I think
12 months.
I think you'd almost need a longer time frame. I think part of it is just because of data collection, right? You need to understand what your processes are. Project life cycles are long. It's not, hey, projects last a week. Some projects do. So you need to understand project life cycle. So I think you need to have and understand processes. I think know your team, know where you should be investing into technology and where it's okay. Like I think, and perhaps this may be the best way or best thing to say, but sometimes okay is good enough. Like if you've got a fairly streamlined paper-based process, like I think that's okay. And so there might be a time in the future where like, hey, we can overhaul this and improve upon it. Hey, have at it. But I think knowing where to draw that line. So I think to understand the processes, understand where the opportunities are. And I think even just kind of understanding how your team acts and adapts. And I mean, I think a lot of it is incumbent on, do you have a flexible team that can kind of withstand that change or that can absorb some of that and be flexible and kind of move. And I think as a construction organization, you're going to have to really impart that on your team members, because as we continue, as society moves, as construction evolves and adapts, like, even overseeing our sustainability department, lead expectations change, sustainability expectations change, client expectations change. There's BIM, and all of a sudden, like, okay, now BIM is being a higher requirement on more projects. Maybe that was something you just did on 1 or 2 projects. Now that needs to happen on more projects. So I think coaching and training and leading your team to be flexible and to adapt to these changes. And then once they're able to do that, just start introducing some of this new technology, because I think that's the only way that your company is going to grow, especially when, the industry is moving as fast as it is. So I don't know if that answers your question about what needs to happen, but those are some good action steps to like understand and come to a fuller, deeper understanding of your processes, your people, and then the opportunities.
So there you go. I mean, if you think about it in terms of those 3 Ps here, right? Understand your processes, know your people, and then pick your product that you're going to use.
Yeah.
And that's very vital. I really appreciate that. As we wrap up here, I do have a question about how technology should be driven most effectively. Does it come from the specialty trades? Does it come from the GCs? Is it a combination? How do you see that?
Yeah. It's a great question. I think it's from the top and from the bottom. I remember when I was on job sites, it was the specialty trades that had the slickest technology because they had the thinnest margins. And because of that, they had to adapt and they had to evolve. And so there was a lot of times of almost like upward permutation of technology where a GC is like, hey, mechanical contractor, what software are you using? That looks really great. We want to use that as well. And then on the other side, I see it being driven by owners, right? And so owners are becoming more and more savvy. We're just saying, hey, on this project, we need to see P6. On this project, we need to see Microsoft Project. Whatever it might be, we're seeing owners demand certain types of technology. And because of that, I think that's forcing and driving a lot of change. I think sometimes, and this was true in my past, where I worked for GCs that had really good margins. And because of that, they didn't necessarily need to evolve or adapt or change, but they were grossly inefficient. It was all covered up by bigger margins. And now when things kind of get thinner, there's almost that we need to adapt, we need to change, we need to become more efficient. And the only way to really become more efficient is through innovation. So I think that is something. So top and the bottom is where the biggest changes are happening.
Excellent. Well, Karl, you've been very generous with your time. Just if someone wants to reach out and contact you, connect with you, how can they do that best?
Yeah, reach out to me via LinkedIn. I'm happy to set up a conversation or email or whatever it might be. I'm very passionate about construction, very passionate about technology. And so, I might have mentioned this earlier, but, a rising tide raises all ships. And, if I can do my part to improve the industry, to provide another thought or, even just a new idea that can really encourage and promote positive growth in construction, I'm all about it. I love it. I love connecting. So feel free to reach out to me via LinkedIn.
Excellent. I will put the link to your profile in the show notes so people can do that. One last question. You're out there in Washington, D.C. I'm hoping to fly out there with some of my kids and do the museums out there. What's the one restaurant we need to hit?
Ooh, there's so many.
What's your favorite?
I would be a big fan of, to be honest, I don't eat out all that much.
Yeah, right.
We might need to ask another question. Yeah, I have no idea.
Okay, no problem. No problem. That's a good answer. What do you do for fun in Washington, D.C.?
I love when the museums are open. I'm all about the museums.
All right, then that's a good question. What museum absolutely should you not miss when you're in D.C.?
Yeah, the Museum of American History. I love it. I mean, maybe I'm just a little bit more like a war geek, but like I love walking through that and learning it. And seeing kind of where the country's been. So yeah, don't miss that museum. I've gone several times. There's a lot of museums out here, and there's a lot of museums I haven't seen yet, but that's one I've gone to several times just because, I don't know, I feel like I always learn something new.
Beautiful. Okay, I'll put a link in the show notes to the Museum of American History. And Karl, you've been extremely generous with your time and your insights. I appreciate you joining us today on Construction Genius.
Thank you, Eric. It was a pleasure to be here.
Today's episode was brought to you by the Construction Conclave. If you as a construction leader would like to develop your skills and get involved in a community of like-minded construction professionals who are focused on building healthy teams, profitable projects, and long-term successful businesses, then the Construction Conclave is for you. It's a private invitation-only group of construction leaders that are focused on developing their leadership skills. We do training every single month online that looks at how to become a better leader in a very practical, straightforward way. We also have other events that build community and camaraderie so that you can associate with others who are interested in developing their skills as leaders. If you'd like more information and to see if you qualify for participating in the conclave, feel free to reach out to me, eric@ericanderton.com. Thank you for listening to this episode of Construction Genius. Hope you found that 1% of inspiration to help you in the next few days. If you like the show, please give us a 5-star review on iTunes, share it with other construction leaders who you think would benefit, and thanks again for listening.